Since the dawn of modern culture, a pernicious myth has cast a long shadow over the profound transition of midlife for men. The insidious notion of the midlife crisis represents far more than just a denigrating cultural narrative. It stands as a direct assault on the very spirit of masculinity itself. This demeaning trope, which reduces this remarkable rite of passage to a bleak caricature of despair, shattered dreams, and embarrassing grasps at recaptured youth through reckless indulgences, is revelatory of a broader agenda to disempower and contain the restive fires of authentic masculine energy. For what appears on its surface to be a mere condescending cliché, in fact serves as an inculcated program of social control, a means of pathologizing the natural reshifting of male consciousness in midlife, so as to funnel it into prescribed channels of posturing, overcompensation, and restrained complacency. At its core, the midlife crisis myth attempts to undermine masculinity during one of its most explosive phases of potential reawakening and redefinition. As men approach this pivot point, they encounter a pivotal crossroads where the development of consciousness demands an accounting of their journeys thus far. Having dutifully played out the roles, adopted the masks, and sleepwalked through the scripts dictated by society's limiting definitions of what a successful man must pursue, the masculine spirit inevitably stirs once more, beckoning towards a reckoning. Hidden reservoirs of unlived potential, deferred dreams, and haunting what-ifs rouse from uneasy slumber, fomenting an alchemical distillation of identity. And it is here that the crisis myth attempts to hijack this process and redirect it into approved channels of societal reintegration. By framing midlife as an era of crisis rather than transformation, the myth immediately pathologizes and marginalizes what is in truth an initiated step towards the transcendence of artificial imposed identities. It suggests that a man's natural impulse towards revisiting his core existential questions, towards shedding the constrictive husks of persona he has inhabited, towards rediscovering his essential fire and reasserting his sovereign birthright, is not the hallmark of a maturation process, but a pitiable descent into madness requiring course correction. In this framing, the midlife crisis becomes an indictment of masculinity itself. The crass behaviors and perceived overcompensations it stereotypically manifests are portrayed not as understandable expressions of a soul in transition, but as unfortunate regressions into the supposedly toxic aspects of the masculine psyche, which must be tamped down, medicated, and ushered back into the approved channels of servile societal conformity. Yet nothing could be further from the truth. The midlife transition, rather than representing some imagined crisis of masculinity, proffers masculinity its greatest quintessential initiatory right, the final inexorable call to slough off all prior masks and personae in service of radical self-rebirth. It is a supreme ritual beckoning each man to shed the shackles of social conditioning, to liberate himself from the cages of others' disempowered projections and expectations, and to finally give full-throated voice to his most authentic essence. The supposed indulgences that have come to emblemize the midlife transition, the sports cars, sexual reawakenings, fierce carvings for adventure, reveal themselves not as pitiable graspings at lost youth, but as primal shockwaves announcing the resurgence of virile fire energy unleashed. Icons like Neo's awakening exodus from the Matrix and Rocky Balboa's resolute battle to be somebody no longer appear as tortured spasms of unmoored men, but as empowering initiatory narratives, heroic guideposts illuminating the noble struggle for selfhood that elevates a man from boy to sage. In the Matrix, Neo shatters the illusions that had imprisoned him, rejecting the path of least resistance in order to rebel against the oppressive system and seek a life resonant with his most sacred depths. His escape from the cubicle, that dehumanizing symbol of spiritual death into transcendent rebirth, perfectly encapsulates the supreme act of courage required to undergo the midlife transition. For like Neo, we must eventually stare into the abyss of our own cavern of conformity and make a choice. Remain shackled in the hellish comforts of our mind-forged prisons, or heed the soul's highest callings to embark upon an entirely new mode of being truer to our elemental, eternal truths. We encounter similar symbolic resonance in Rocky Balboa's iconic journey to be somebody despite a lifetime of marginalization. After years entombed in the cowardly reality of an unlived life, he finally resolves to unleash his long-suppressed potentials upon the world in one cataclysmic demonstration of the warrior spirit's refusal to accept anything less than the full enthronement of its sovereign right to self-actualization. Every tear cried, every punch thrown in Rocky's climactic battle encapsulates the anguished yet transcendent reckoning experienced by every man summoned from mere existence into the fullness of legendary selfhood. These narratives carry precisely because they depict something primal and essential erupting forth from men, not pitiable derangements to be corrected, but a blazing refusal to remain entombed in half-lived identities any longer. They demonstrate that the stuff of heroic selfhood is only revealed through the anguish of confronting unlived possibilities, through plunging unflinchingly into the abyss to be reborn anew. It is in this darkness that mastery and wholeness finally emerge. What was previously marketed as lamentable indulgence and weakness is instead revealed as masculinity itself reinitiating into its most primordial, elemental, and iconic embodiment. The midlife crisis is no crisis at all, but the collapse of constructed fictions allowing the revelation of essential truths. The fires that burn away those infantile masks cannot be extinguished. They are an alchemical transition woven into the very fabric of a man's life code, the thundering call of cosmic masculinity demanding we at last become who we were eternally born to be. The old narratives and easy categories of social control have become unsalvageable. Bankrupt fictions laid bare. Ahead shimmers an entirely new plane of transformational potential where the empowered masculine psyche steels itself to finally breathe life into its most essential, inspired incarnations. This is the path revealed by the midlife transition, the great crescendo where men choose to either rise into the radiant apotheosis of their highest selves or retreat into lifelong inertia and unfulfillment. The choice is pivotal, yet simple. Heed your calling to descend through smoke and fire into ultimate initiation as the masterwork you are destined to be, a beacon of inspired, fully embodied masculinity burning so brilliantly it could light the world, or be condemned to the slumbering emptiness of an unlived life, shackled by others' disempowering myths and narratives, until the last embers of your essential fire banks into layers of soulless societal nicety. The path ahead is arduous, but one that leads toward elevated consciousness and integral selfhood. It is the journey that revelatory midlife awakening invites all men to undertake, to obliterate the very notion of the midlife crisis, to reclaim their birthright as luminous beacons of inspired, empowered masculinity, and to emerge into radiant new possibilities of what it means to be a man striding unflinchingly toward his highest, most heroic, most self-authored existence. The abyss beckons. Who among us has the courage to answer the call?